All right. Good morning, cyber traders. Welcome on back here for another fantastic edition of our weekly workshop Traders Talk. I'm your host, Josh Levitan, senior instructor here at Cyber Trading University. Got a face for radio and honestly a voice for like newspaper this morning. I'm pretty sick. Raspy voice here. I will survive. Great to see all of our students at least joining us here, though. Alex, Lawrence, Margaret, Larry, Abdul, Laureen, Andrea, all of us otherwise. Try and talk a little less, at least this edition in Traders Talk. Spare you the voice. But well hydrated right now. Let me actually post this poll question back up from our main trading room here just right now. Sent out a poll just right before I started this live workshop. Welcome aboard to any of our new trial members joining us here, or newly enrolled students otherwise, and especially those of us on social media today: Facebook Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, etc. Hey, there's a lot going on right now, isn't there? We got the ENVX trade flying on up right now, breaking new highs. If you're a more experienced, successful trader in our room, I can list many of us, but let's say Andrea or Phil, Chuck, many of us, you might be in this trade still. So let me actually ask another question before I address the poll question I had just set up. Is anyone in this trade here, the ENVX? Anyone still in on this ENVX stock? Let me actually get my screen sharing officially for all of us in our room. I thought I did that just before, which they're still up. There we go. There we go. All right. So get my screen sharing for all of us right now. But yeah, should be able to see the ENVX trade now. And especially if you're on social media, you had that there. But if anyone's in on this stock now, this thing is like flying Brian here, right? Breaking new highs on the way up towards next resistance, likely around like 18, looking at the long-term chart. But I'd asked just before, hey, just for all of our students here that were with us throughout the morning, going into the market open up until this workshop, what stock did you spend the most time following or trading this morning? And quite frankly, most of us were, I think, looking at that ENVX, at least going into the morning. So what we'll do is recap not just this stock, we'll recap a few different runners that we had today. This is a great day all around. I was out yesterday, so Rich was in for me, at least in our trading room, doing the audio with Fausto, and I didn't have much interest all around today, or yesterday, I should say. So today was honestly my Monday. I'll go over what I was doing here today, but quite frankly, I didn't really prep up any levels for this stock going into the morning. Start off by saying I was more focused on CCL. I was more focused on NVIDIA. Those were my two. NVIDIA options, CCL options possibly, and then BITO, which is a Bitcoin ETF for the long term, for the swing. So, this was on our watch list, of course. This was one of the better plays in pre-market, and I could have taken the time to line this chart up. But you know what? No better place to do that here. This is where we have the best chance to go over the X's and O's and realize why exactly did this stock make the move that it made. That's what we're here for, right? It's easy to look back in hindsight. Oh, I could have gotten in here and I could have sold here. That's not what we're doing, right? I mean, even if the stock had good news that came out in pre-market, we're not just buying a stock because news comes out, right? That's pretty irresponsible. I mean, Fausto goes over this in his weekly webinars every Thursday, pretty much. He has a podcast now every Wednesday. Tomorrow, just check him out with Trading Strategy company out there, and they're going to be discussing just a few things, not just with day trading, but also more on the macro and on the swing. But at least Fausto says this every week, if not twice a week. News does not push a stock up and down. I mean, it might initially, but it's the buyers and sellers out there afterwards. Just take one look at RGS. We'll jump into this one next. I mean, obviously, this had a pretty good run up earlier today, but it peaked pretty early in the morning. It's pulling back now. Simply put, this doesn't have the type of momentum that this trade still has. So why does one have one but not the other? We don't know that ahead. We don't know how or when ahead of time, but we have to do our best to plot out where the larger levels are in terms of support resistance, in terms of where the large buy and sell orders are out there. So at least for anyone interested in the news, I'll break out Benzinga Pro here really briefly. This is the little blurb, little news headline out on ENVX this morning. They signed an agreement to deliver high performance battery for mixed reality headset. So, catchy headline, right? But, the whole AI sector is pretty hyped up, a lot of pop and drops out there. So, obviously here, this thing's still going up, as we said. So what gives? Where were the larger levels? Well, for all of our students here, give me a chance to breathe and take a sip of water. For Phil, Kathleen, Chris, all of our students here, where are we most likely to find the icebergs? For a $15 stock or so, 14, $15 stock, what common set of price levels should we initially be focused around in terms of seeing these iceberg orders? Never take water for granted, by the way. Chris says 50-cent levels and whole numbers. Yeah, so all of us saying whole numbers otherwise, right? I mean, I like how you kind of responded to how I'd phrased the question there, because this isn't an expensive stock. This is not expensive. I mean, to each their own on what they define, but I'm talking like $50, $60 is pretty expensive. This is not expensive of a stock, but it's not like dirt cheap. So I likely would be more focused around the whole number levels more than anything at first, especially with how nice of a run the stock had in pre-market. It looks pretty rangy. So 13, 14, 15, we'll just kind of look at it first. Then maybe we'll slap on the 50-cent levels. We'll see. Now, let's just look at some good old charting. We'll do that next. I mean, this actually has some pretty clean levels. Look at this. Topped off back in July last year, around like 23-ish, we'll call it. We'll get an exact price over time. I mean, obviously, it's not close enough now, but looks like a bit of a head and shoulders was building long term, little pop drop, and then back under this area. I'm just loosely putting a line here. It's like 1550 ish, 1525 ish, this shoulder here maybe. So, that seems to be a pretty strong area to work off of. Let me just plot a line there on my 1-minute chart. I don't mind doing that. I'll move that line around if need be. It's like 1530-ish, 1550-ish. The more this pops up and approaches that level, I would assume for that level to be good resistance, right? That's all. So that 1530 is exactly that right there. So what else do we have? Anything else? I mean, going back even further. Can we go back more? Ugh, it's got like a crazy chart up and down here over time. Trying to eyeball a few levels that's nearby where the stock is trading now. That was a good one at 1530-ish, 1550-ish. Can't force anything out there, so this is exactly that. 1532, 1534. That's what we were just kind of focused around right there, that area. So, all right, that's fine. Not going to force anything else out there. Let's go to Bookmap right now. Let's just open up level 4. And, again, hindsight's 2020, but as much as I have this up here already, I don't remember the levels. I barely remember what I had for breakfast. A little noodle brain here today, just coming off being sick. That's what happens when you spend a week with your 2 nieces, sharing all the good germs, right? All right, so let's see that we can gather a couple of good levels to work off of right now. Dim the lights there a bit. Does anything stand out to you? Are there any price levels that look like they're like there's any darker, larger orange red lines that you see? What do we got? Laureen says $15. Giancarlo joining us, one of our new trial members joining us. Hope you're enjoying your time, Giancarlo. Sorry to have you deal with my raspy voice here today. Bunny says 15. Grant says 1450. Phil says 1393. So let's take a look. So, well, this is kind of where just the stock was trading before the market opened. What's this here to begin? This is at like 7:30 in the morning, right? What happens here? About 20,000 shares on the ask at the price 1369, right around there. And then also up top here, right? 1450. So if anyone wrote 1450, that was one answer I was kind of looking for. Then also here, right? Not so easy to see at first, but just focused around like the darker orange lines out there. You could kind of see it here, the bolder, darker lines. Looking at CVP, there's nothing that stands out to me out there. There's not one that really is that much sharper that I'm too sold on. That's fine. So let me just plot a couple of levels here. We will plot 1450, 50-cent level there. And then we will plot 1369. Is that what we had there? Yeah. All right, so market opens up. Ding, ding, ding. All right, well, we wait the first 5 minutes. I told you on the microphone, if you're inside our live trading room, that, I mean, hey, with being out yesterday, today is my Monday. So normally we do this anyway. Even furthermore, if it's kind of like your first trading day of the week, you're shaking off the cobweb, shaking off the ring rust. What are we doing once the market opens up, folks? What are we doing? Taught this back a couple months ago in the phase one stock course. We actually have a class later this afternoon for all of our bronze students and above. Yeah, you got to wait the first few minutes, right? First 3 to 5 minutes. So that's where most often, not only am I just kind of twiddling my thumbs, I'm not just like doing nothing, mind you. We're focused on the stocks that we're looking at. So if you took the time to, line up this chart going into the open, if you took your time in pre-market to do exactly what we just did here, then there's something pretty important that we should be doing right within the first couple minutes there. And Chris, you are one step ahead, no surprise. He says, chart the opening bell print. Chris got out on that ENVX trade just a moment ago at 1643. I don't know if any of our students saw that just before. Um, I caught that just momentarily. So right there, one of our platinum students, Chris, got out at 1643 just before on this stock live. But yeah, plot the opening bell print. I mean, hey, that's the last level that we need to look at before all the good stuff happens. We have pretty much everything else set. Even have a historical level plotted, right? At like 1530-ish, 1550-ish, roughly that area. All right, well, what was the opening bell print? Well, take a look at this. It's red right here. It's about 137,000 shares at the price 1405, right? 1405. Right. So this is where I teach this every week here in Traders Talk. And then actually, I mean, not to just keep mentioning class here, but transparently enough, this month in time and sales class, we're going to be covering not just, here in phase one, but a lot more in phase two. I'll be coming up, I believe, on Thursday this week. Thursday morning, we'll be talking about time and sales. And then going into phase two this week, we'll be continuing that by talking much more about this here, the opening bell print. But at least for right now, let's at least address it here. This order at 14.50, $14.50. How many shares is that order? I want you to tell me. How many shares is that orange or red line at 14.50? Answers on the heat map. It's right there. 21,000. Well, don't forget about that one. Don't forget about that one person out there. You don't want to, give them the cold shoulder. Let's include them. We're inclusive here. So it's to say 21,000 plus shares, obviously, right? Okay. Market opened up. This is 137,000 shares. Folks, what's a larger number? 21,000 or 137,000? Please tell me. Right? No curveballs here, folks. This is a lob. This is a softball for us to just hit outside the park. Obviously, the price at 1405, the 137,000 shares here, is much larger in size. So if we respect the iceberg that was here at 1450, then what are we doing by not looking at this? What are we doing by just ignoring this here, the 137,000? So for anyone that doesn't realize how important this is, well, I hope that you join us in class coming up Thursday this week. We'll do this class in time and sales, and then in phase two, just by the end of this week and next. So what happened here? First 5 minutes panned out. Ooh, this made its pop right over the opening print, pretty much on the cusp of the first 5 minutes. So if you're looking for that cleaner move right afterwards, unfortunately, it does it right beforehand. So I typically wait the first 5 minutes in full. It has to be an extremely tempting setup. And this is pretty damn tempting. So let me just ask our students here. Let's say if you are a more profitable trader in our room on a day-to-day level, I'm not going to mention a single name there because just, hey, it's for you to look in the mirror and say, are you that person or not? So let's say if you are. If you take this trade right at the time, 9:33 and 49 seconds, all right, you're not like jumping in on the first candle, right? You're not jumping in literally at 9:30, 9:31, 9:30. You're doing your damn best to wait. You're waiting for this, first 5 minutes, but it's breaking through this big level on the way up. All right, let's say if you take this trade right off of 1405, 1407, that's your entry price. What's the first thing that you're doing? After you get filled, let's say if you're using TradeStation as your broker, probably have a raspy enough voice here to do it. And probably they have that robotic voice that would say, order filled, something like that, right? What's the first thing that you're doing after you get filled on your trade? You are setting your seatbelt, right? You're putting your stop in, you're setting your seatbelt tight. So you want to make sure that you're setting your stop, if not under 14, the whole number there, if anything, because it's pretty close to 1405, maybe under this low here. This looks like a dip there at first, then, you just can't have this thing really shake around too much. Like we preach every week here, like we preach in class every month. When a stock breaks through a big level, we should be getting a big move shortly after. And we did on the way up. Pretty simple, right? That's the easy to say part. That's the easy to look at part. But if you're here every week and if you're focused on this process, remember how I kind of phrased it just over the last couple of months in class. This is all a process. It is a step by step by step. So that's how I was having you go through the motions just before. Market opens up. We wait the first 5 minutes pretty much. I'll discuss a scenario coming up in just a bit, but otherwise, let's say when you jump in a trade, you should be entering a trade directly after a stock breaks through a big level on the way up. All right, and then right after that, what are we doing immediately after that? We're setting our stop, right? So step by step, all of our students here, Michael, Susie, Laureen, Grant, Irving, Margaret, Sam, Lawrence. I mean, if I shout you out, my apologies, and going jumping around there. We're all answering that problem. We're all going through that process correctly there. I love it. All right, now let's bring up the scenario. Let's pretend that you're a stickler like I am. Let's pretend that you are pretty much waiting that 5 minutes. It's pretty rare to see me take a trade within the first 5 minutes, like I'd said. So let's say if I missed that move, if I missed the break over 1405, well, what's next? Well, let's take a look to see where our levels were. Because obviously it took off. Obviously ended up making a pretty strong breakout. But our next level was right off of 1450, wasn't it? According to the levels that we plotted, that's what it was. So, with that in mind, looks like it had a quick break over 1450, but actually on a couple of occasions, most immediately here, you could see it broke under and then back over these down wicks here, right? So after it breaks over 1450, it shakes back down on this one candle. And then seemingly on the two candles after that, you could just kind of look for it on the first one here. Just looking for under and over, under and over. So if you're tailoring your entries around that, just like we teach in class, then that seemingly gave you the next entry. Moved up to 15. Hey, this is how we always kind of preach it anyway. After a stock does make a pretty big move and is breaking levels and moving up, 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 I'd like to think the first time it tests the next resistance, we should expect to see it false break, like a pop and drop, a fail. Man, if this thing just keeps ripping resistance on the first test, that's very rare. You can't really have that stock keep moving up and up and up and up and up and up. Go through another quick analogy I thought of here. I'm kind of in teacher mode, although I'm coming off being sick a little bit. I'm still getting in my teacher mode right now. So I have a good example for us as well coming up ahead. But hey, look what happened at 15. False broke at 15. It was a pop and a nasty shake. So that's where, of course, look what happened the next attempt. It ended up making that better push. Rebroke 15 on the next test, right? With more buying, it led to that better push. But either way, look what happened again here. Look what became support prior to that. 1450. Once the stock breaks over resistance and it runs off of it, makes a clean run. I'd like to think that the first time it pulls back to that level afterwards, that's the best attempt to try and see it hold support. So, I don't even think it breaks under it. It kind of just hovers over it here pretty nicely. So it does a good job. But either way, it does its job and moves back up. Then from there, 15, look what happens on the first test of this as support. Under, over. It doesn't get much cleaner than this, folks. It really doesn't. Over time, it keeps going up. You'll have to kind of keep playing that same reaction. Even 1530 here, it looked pretty staticky. Like we were saying, this was kind of more of a range of resistance. It was around 1530-ish, 1550-ish. So it's kind of tough to use that here at this point. But obviously, higher low, higher high, And at this stage now, I mean, again, it'll be tough to pick the exact bottom, but if this decides to pull back later on today or tomorrow, later on this week, I would love to have this historical level, the level that we plotted here on the daily chart or weekly chart at 1530-ish, whatever, we'll find that out to be as, for that to be that support on the first test. All right. If you're joining on social media right now, I got a face for radio and a voice for newspaper as I labeled. So no webcam today, but otherwise, let me know if you have any questions, at least as far as what we just covered on the ENVX. That goes across the board. Irving, Kathleen, Laureen, Brian, Susie, Alex, any of us here in chat, let me know. Man, this thing just keeps going up though, right? So we'll take a live look right now, obviously, with that in mind. So we'll go live. All right, so we have our next resistance at 17. You figured it would be a whole number level, just like we brought up before, more on a smaller scale, about 23,000 shares there. Now, in combination of that, we now have a new seller here at 1690, 32,000 shares roughly. It already made such a large move off of this one here, that I do think it's going to false break or at least hold under resistance, then come back down. Man, whatever news came out on this thing, like we showed earlier, clearly it's good now. But when the news comes out, you can't just assume that to be the case. We already plotted 17. So we'll come back to this trade in just a little bit. We'll show you at least what happened to this momentarily. All right. There's a stock right now, though, that I'm very interested in. I want to show you that at least. And to, really shoot straight, I mean, I just plotted this whole thing in front of you. So I didn't have any lines plotted for ENVX. I had lines plotted for CCL, though. That's for damn sure. So, I took a lot of my own time to, focus on Carnival today. Big shout out to Michael Dorsey, one of our longtime students. And, he made the first shout on this. And I really say, shout out to him, because it's not just like, first the punch. This was ultra rare. This is like pretty rare to see happen. And actually, in terms of rarity, I guess it's pretty common for CCL. They might be one of the only stocks, one of the only companies that does this damn thing. They reported their earnings like 15 minutes before the market opened up. Normally when companies report earnings in pre-market, it's at like 7 in the morning, right? It's at like 8 in the morning, right? Maybe it's at 9 o'clock. Maybe on a rarity 9 o'clock, but 9:15? You kidding me? So CCL popped, like we said, 9:15, 9:16. They ended up beating their revenue and their EPS. So Michael D just shouted it out. And the second I saw the pop, I said, okay, I like it. I like it. Unless if it's a complete pop and drop move, then, obviously I'll move on. But here, once the market opened up, it led to a pretty clean breakout off of 1710. And then from there, it led to the flip of that into support. So basically, just where you see these levels that are more closely knit to each other, and then maybe even over time. Give me a moment here. Do I have another range? Nah, it's just more now focused around the whole number levels and 50-cent levels at that point. That's okay. But basically, it's to say kind of like what happened with ENVX at 14 and at the opening bell print there at 1405. I'm looking for a couple of things to happen. Maybe this can act as a range of support, since these two prices are fairly close to each other in relation. And then same to be said here, to have 17 and then 1710, two separate iceberg levels out there, right near each other in price. That range of resistance, once it got broken through, led ultimately to a range of support. So that's what led to my re-entry on CCL. Bought option calls. I bought both 17 and 18 as the strike price just for the week. Thankfully, today's a Tuesday, right? So I'm playing the weeklies on this one. But as we head into Wednesday, Thursday, I wouldn't normally look to do that. I would just trade the stock. But here, it's cheaper. You can load up on more even. And I was hoping to see this begin to build higher lows. I was a little nervous here as it shook back down. Hey, the more times this support level gets poked at, perhaps it ends up getting broken through. And that's where I'd be down a bit on, at least on the 18 calls, if anything. So, that was more of a risk. But otherwise, though, for this range of resistance to get broken through, I was pretty bullish on the thought of that being support at first. Now, what was the opening bell print on this trade? I mean, I didn't plot that actually. I didn't plot what the opening bell print was. I mean, I may have done that on my main template here. But, on this one here, I was just kind of using this as my display, my multi-screen chart just to like use, especially for the options that I'm trading on this. But what was the opening bell print? What was the price? You tell me what the price was, the opening bell print. I actually wrote it incorrectly in the chat. I wrote it incorrectly, so a little typo from myself there. I wrote it, I think, as 1702, 1704, maybe. Yeah, I wrote it as 1702. It's not the world's biggest mistake, but it can make a difference there. Looking at this graph here, you could see it says volume in the data box there. It says volume. It says 812,000 at 17. I had to readjust my volume dot settings here, and I ended up realizing that throughout the morning. All right, well, either way, it doesn't even make a huge difference here at all. Folks, if 17 was already a big level prior to the market opening up, and now we have this 812,000 share block print filled at 17 when the market opens up. It's like kind of adding extra concrete or extra steel to the support here to the resistance over time. So at least once this ended up breaking down at first, I wasn't so bullish on it getting flipped right away. I thought it would take a little time. It took about, well, not too long in terms of time here at first, but it ended up beginning to make a stronger push up, right? It wasn't, I thought it would take a little bit longer time than this, but looks like really just within a couple of minutes of that, 2.5 minutes of that, it ended up making that breakout. Hey, resistance flipped into support. That's what I was ultimately looking for later on. So that's the trade that I'm currently in on right now. And at that, I want to focus on this just for a small bit live. Actually, I'm going to try and kill two birds with one stone. I do have a question that came in via email just before. One of our students just focused around options, and he took an option play on Penn National Gaming the other day. So, hopefully my conversation here will trickle into Dave's question with that in just a bit. All right, so let's take a look to see what's happening right now. I'll show the heat map once more. I mean, we know where we have our levels set already for this stock, but let's see if anything else popped up that's new, anything that wasn't there earlier. Here's 1750, no shock. Well, hey, look what's ahead here. This showed up. I mean, a little prior to 10 o'clock in the morning, so I didn't have this line plotted. It's about 103,000 shares that were out there, basically at 1760, 1761. Okay, well, you know what? That creates an area, right? Like we said before, not just a level, but since it's pretty close in relation to where 1750 is, this range of resistance, once the stock runs from it, this is not a run. Right now, it's trying to at least contain itself above the area. But once it actually runs off of this from resistance, that's when I would be more hopeful to see this become the better support later on. So this is all good. This is all nice to see here, right? 18's our next level ahead, about 200,000 shares on the offer there. Now, if that pops, I'll be a happy camper. Now, otherwise, though, where I was focused around, and I didn't want to hold my breath waiting for this move, but look what I plotted. That's the same type of line I plotted on ENVX, right? Same purple type of line that is. Well, that means actually to me, and the way I kind of set my levels, focus on where the larger support resistance is. This is a historical to me. This was back from the daily or weekly or monthly chart there. So, that was right off of like 1930-ish or 1950-ish roughly. Let's just jump to that there pretty quick. Yeah, 1950, and you could see just back from last year, it was like a double top basically. Back in July last year, then back in December. So, hey, that's a pretty strong resistance. The more that gets approached, or not even more, let's just say the next time that gets approached, at least on the intraday basis here, like the 1 minute chart, I'd feel strong that that would be resistance at first. But the more that this does get poked at over time, and who knows when that would be looking on the long-term basis there. This is a monthly chart. So, it's kind of building a Fausto flag, mind you. But the more that resistance does get poked at, pressed at, it's more inclined to believe that it's going to lead to that better run. Look what just happened going back again on the 1 minute chart here at 1750 and a 1760. So once this range of resistance finally got cracked, it allows the stock a better chance to try and make that better move. All right. So really quick, let me just go through a question from Dave. Segue that to Dave because we were talking about option calls I was doing on CCL. Dave wrote to me earlier, said thanks for reaching out. So far, the only trade I've made with the CTU service was an option trade on Penn last Thursday. It did turn out well, made 66% in under 20 minutes. I would say so. I would say that's like an absolute home run. He says, but I have not yet pulled to trigger on any trades during the trading room periods. So, meaning that basically he's looking to do more, but he's been a bit hesitant. He hasn't pulled the trigger yet on any other trades since that option trade on Penn. And we were focused on that stock too. That was all me in the afternoon, right? That was the afternoon session. That was the rumored buyout, right, by Boyd Gaming. I remember that like the back of my hand. So, we'll go over that stock exactly in just a bit. Dave says he was very tempted yesterday, but I'm still not in the clear on when to do so. I do realize that it is dependent on the order flow. I just haven't been quick enough to execute at the correct time. Okay, so a couple things to hammer home here, just really quick. These are all basics. These are all just things that we mentioned in our phase one class, but these are the things that I think about right away myself when I'm trading. These are kind of my North Stars. So, like we said previously, 50-cent levels and whole number levels. If you were to go back to Penn National Gaming here, this was a great trade from last week. We smashed out the park on this stock after it pulled back. It took a few minutes to build support. It wasn't perfect instantly, but the payoff was definitely worthwhile. Yeah, right here. All right. So I don't have the heat map for this stock. Not going to be able to go back on the heat map. But if you're just focused at like 19, let's just start there. All right. So broke out right away here. Got halted on the way up. When a stock breaks above resistance and it runs off of it, folks, resistance initially should become what? Support. So it came back down on the first test of this as support. It broke under it, and then very quickly it broke through that big level on the way back up. So that actually led to my entry on this trade. We were following this going into the afternoon. And at first, well, it was off of like 1920-ish at first. I was looking for support. And once it broke there, I said, okay, what's the next one after that? 19. So that's where I led to my re-entry on this trade. So I took two entries, took a loss in the first. Then on the second, I led to the bounce I wanted. But from there, though, it led to an under and over. Right away, that's one thing to think about. Think about whole number levels, and you could say 50-cent levels, but let's just be even more safe to be sorry than to be sorry. So first time it comes up to 20 as resistance, it really didn't do much afterwards, right? For as much as it ran up, 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 up. The first time it hit resistance, it really didn't make that big run. It didn't continue right away. So, those are things that I'll preach more about in class. But right away, number one, just focus on whole number prices. Number two, cyber clock around 10:30 Eastern every morning, give or take 15 minutes. That is, you'll see most stocks look to reverse, look to make a bit of a dip, especially if it had a strong run throughout the morning or a strong drop throughout the morning. If a stock was dropping and down on the morning and by 10:15, 10:30, it's at support. No guarantee, but you would like to look for an under and over, look for support to build and get that reversal kicked in. Same to be said for a stock running up and testing resistance. Eventually, every roller coaster has a top. Actually, this is where I'll jump to my example here. Who here used to like roller coasters growing up as a kid, still likes them now, perhaps? If you're, taking your kids or grandkids going, if you're on a roller coaster nowadays, let me know. Let me know if you used to like doing it. Unless if you have a pretty decent sized trading account, you couldn't pay me anything to jump on a roller coaster. Barbara never. I know Barbara likes the NASCAR races. I'm maybe more watching them than maybe doing the high speed and doing the big moves. I'm not a big fan of going into a steel device going down like 250 feet at 90 miles per hour. No, no, not for me. All right, real quick trivia here. Does anyone know what the world's largest roller coaster is? The world's tallest roller coaster. I did not know it was this until I just looked it up. I was like, oh, wow, I didn't know. It was a kind of a hometown thing for me, somewhat hometown, a little northeast. Phil says the government. All right, comment of the day goes to Phil. Just that's a general statement, obviously, not political, but just very general. But just it's to say at least that King Dakar in New Jersey, Six Flags. This right there is the world's tallest roller coaster. It's at 458 feet. You couldn't pay me to be on this thing, folks. All right, so who here likes roller coasters? Larry, you like roller coasters? Phil, Grant, Philip M, Brian, you still do? Okay. Let's pretend you're on King Dakar here. And let's pretend that you are about 430 feet up out of the 458 feet up. It's kind of odd to keep expecting more and more and more and more and more after you've gone up so much already. You know you're on the world's longest roller coaster already. Obviously, it's a little bit of a difference between this and just trading stocks, but in the sense of time, in the sense of perspective of where you are in the run, you can't keep expecting more. Eventually, every roller coaster has a top, right? Lawrence I says Splash Mountain. Larry B says, we got a couple Larry B's in tandem here. A trial member here says, I'll pass on 458 feet. And my friend Larry Butler right there saying, absolutely not. Yeah, not for me, Larry. That's for sure. We'll stick out there with ice fishing. But no, it's to say, if you're a roller coaster person, when you're up top here, you can't say, oh, let's keep going up another 200 feet. Every roller coaster has a top, my friends, and I would want you to play it safe in terms of the cyber clock. So 10:15, 10:30 Eastern time, that is where we should be expecting a top to begin to build. Then from there, I mean, otherwise, 3:30, 4 o'clock, that's our next best trading time going into the afternoon. Look what happened here on Penn National Gaming. Obviously, a little coincidental with the news that was released, but led to a phenomenal run after. We had a lot of volatility in that final 30 minutes. So just next step for Dave here, who's asking about this. Whole numbers and then cyber clock. Focus on those two to begin. Then otherwise, this is more, abstract. This is just my catchphrase here. We go over this a lot here and then obviously a lot further under a microscope in class. But when a stock breaks through a big level on the way up, that generates a clean entry to me. That's not just seeing support building. That's seeing resistance get broken through. So, even from here, once this popped above 17, 1710, if it was after the first 5 minutes, that would have led to a pretty clean entry at that point, right? So you got to have a few of these cardinal rules kind of line up for you in order to, cleanly take the trade, set your stop. If you're a new student, I could see where it's overwhelming at first, because there's a lot moving, a lot of bright colors, a lot of fast moving numbers, a couple different screens to look at maybe. So that's where otherwise in coaching, in class, here in traders talk a little bit here and there, but I got to move quick. Wheeling and dealing quick here every Tuesday morning, folks, but otherwise more in our classes and coaching program. I have a lot better of ability to work with you and really put this under a deeper microscope and see why a stock made the exact move in which it made. Look what happened here. So ENVX getting back to this, like we said before, for as much as it ran up, it did hit actually not just 17, but that brick wall at 1690 that popped up momentarily, right? That order showed up for a bit, false break, back down. Hasn't made a real lower low yet, but listen, when this thing's up as much as it is already, VWAP's all the way down here. Not to say it's going to drop to VWAP, but probably get resistance to get flipped into support over time, no? All right. So, let me just show a trade, at least if I may, on a stock. This will be quick. Just a stock that I was focused on. I told you, CCL and NVIDIA. Those are my main two today. And coming off being sick, brain's not exactly fully there. Obviously, got a voice like sandpaper you could hear. So it's to say that I'm not trying to like take all these trades today, mind you. I'm looking at BITO, which is a Bitcoin ETF for the long term, January 17th calls. CCL, I was a fan of. Shout out to Michael again. ENVX could have been that one. That was a great stock to look at in pre-market. It's not even to just say, oh, that stock moved up after the open. No, that was like up in pre-market. Yeah, it was dropping off a little bit prior to 9:30, but there was a lot of good action out there, good orders. There was a clean trade there. But otherwise, though, I was more focused on NVIDIA. It was up a little bit in pre-market. I was looking at option calls on this if, maybe it could make a good move for me. Now, I was pretty hesitant though, because I didn't want to just be a shooter and be aggressive and, just look to jump into a trade too early. So, market opened up, this pulled back. Basically, what happened was this resistance in pre market, it got broken through, right? And it ran off of it by like $2. That's, a nice little run. All right. Well, resistance initially became support. It didn't touch it here. This was not a real test. Where my cursor is in the pre-market at 7 in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning. This is not a real test. It didn't touch it, didn't go under, over. This right here is not a real spike. It's easy for me to just say this here, and I don't always just tell you to just move on like this, but please just ignore the spike. It's like a little glitch, basically, we'll just call it as, keep it simple right there. But look what happened here. Under, over, run. This would have led to such a clean move. And this was the first thing that was on my plate this morning. CCL, I think, was off to a nice run, but I was looking at NVIDIA initially dropping, and I just didn't take the trade. So no one's perfect. Just to say that there's opportunities that you'll hesitate on for one reason or another. This did everything I needed it to do. It's not even to say it didn't do what I needed it to do. It did. It went under and over. It's a 5-minute chart, so let me just show you the 1-minute version of it. Pretty clean. I mean, maybe the only thing is it dropped off like 50 cents. So I think I was watching it hit 120 and see it hold as resistance here. And I wanted a little bit more as resistance. It was after 9:35. There was plenty of time for me to, at least jump in terms of the entry. I just hesitated. It happens, right? Happens to every one of us. And I'm just sharing that with you because if you get, caught off guard and you get emotional by it, like, in any manner, like, damn it, I can't believe this thing ran up without me. I could have made so much money on this. Oh, so stupid. Folks, it happens to every one of us every single day. So this was a nice one. It moved up 10:15, 10:30 in the morning, reversal period. So this would have been a clean exit. And then maybe even a re-entry here as it broke higher. Simple as that. Now, if you're focused around option calls there, like I would have been there, give me a moment. That I wouldn't have done too out of the money. I just would have either done 120 call. Yeah, I would have done 120 calls on that. Unless if the 125s had a lot of volume off of it, a lot more than otherwise, which I think they do. So, all right. So I guess this morning, once NVIDIA ended up going under and over, I think the 120 calls for this week were at like $3.30. And right now they're trading at 560. So yeah, definitely some good money to be made trading options. But here's the thing. You have to be a great stock trader first before you look to dive into options. That's not just to say. That's not just some like catchphrase, folks. The volatility is a lot worse, a lot higher with options. Time decay and then just otherwise liquidity. NVIDIA is a pretty volatile stock to begin with, so the options are pretty volatile. I'll tell you, I mean, I think Tesla might even be more volatile. There's definitely some even crazier stocks in terms of implied volatility and gamma and all of that stuff out there. But otherwise, it's a matter of just focusing around on the core principles. Even this, not even the green line here. Look at this here, the 120. That's where the entry would have been, should have been, could have been. Well, 120 is not just a whole number level, like a dollar price level, right? It's not just a dollar price level. What type of price level is it, folks? For Luis, Lawrence, Brian, some other names here. Sorry, got Lee, got Roseanne, got Tony, got Corinne, got Elmer, got Kenny. What do we got here, folks? I mean, think of it just like U.S. currency, excluding the ever rare $2 bill. Try not to be a smart guy there and say $2 bill, but you got $1 bill, you got $5 bill, you got after that, like Susie and Sam and Irving Road, 10. It's a decade level number. It's a psychological, level. And it's a level where there's already a lot of options volume being traded at, a lot of stock volume being traded at. I'll show you what the heat map looked like there, but it's just to say that's a nice area to go under and over. Look for that slingshot, as we would call it. So then after that, look at our next $5 incremental. After that, 125, right? This was clean. All right. So, hey, let me know if there's any other stocks you'd want me to just focus on really quickly here, folks, before we wrap up this week's edition of Traders Talk. I'd mentioned to you the BITO, but that's Bitcoin related. If you've been with us even for a few weeks, you know that I am pretty bullish long term on Bitcoin. So that's all I'll tell you in that regard. Bought the dip yesterday, bought a little this morning. I'm going to buy more over time. I'm going to keep buying and then see a nice run up in a few months, I'm sure. Irving says pool stock. Let's take a look at Benzinga here just to see what other stocks we may have here on our scanner. We'll wrap up, I guess. I gotta jack this up here quick. All right, CNSP, nice little run up here right now, I think, but we'll see what the chart looks like. Then you got the miners like Wolf, Hive up big today. I think the Ethereum ETF pretty soon. Tesla. Oh, so speaking of options, there was a lot of option volume at the end of last week. We brought this up at the end of last week before I got sick. So basically, a bunch of options traders ended up selling Tesla puts at the end of last week. So it didn't directly lead to the pop, but just yesterday morning was a pop and drop move. And then even furthermore today, looks like it wants to try and make those higher highs. I don't really follow UOA as much. It's just kind of that I caught it good timing, that headline that came out. So, in moments like that, it's something to keep an eye on, at least day to day. Easily enough, looks like this had a pretty similar move to NVIDIA, where it broke under over a level, maybe 183 here. This had time to build over 183 as support, though. So it looks like NVIDIA took off like quicker, but Tesla made the better move, and it held over a support line pretty damn nice. So, there's plenty of time to get in on this Tesla, at least, especially if you're focused around the UOA, at least the selling of the puts there, expecting some sort of bounce back up towards like the 190s or whatever. Oh, that's right, CNSP. We said we'd jump back to that one stock, CNSP. It's a pop and drop to me. Look at this thing. Up and down, up and down, up again. And I could already tell this spread is horrific. Look at this. This is not a good type of stock to be trading right now, folks. This is where, unfortunately, some traders will fail. And I say that in general. And unfortunately, truth is told here, at CTU, yes, plenty of traders fail. And I don't mean that just on a one-day basis. I mean people that you may have seen a few months ago that you don't see here today in our live trading room because they've lost enough money to where they had quit. And it's because they'll get caught in stocks like this where, maybe they saw other trades from earlier today, like RGS. I mean, just look at this thing from earlier today, made that big pop up in pre-market. We didn't even discuss this as much. Obviously, needless to be said, ENVX back up to the 1690, 17 area. So you look at stocks like these, like moving up all throughout the morning, maybe, or even all throughout the entire day, like right now here. And then they'll look at a stock like CNSP and say, oh, well, this is just starting to pop. Oh, this has to make the higher high. This is the next one. And they'll try and jump in a stock like this. hey, if this breaks higher highs, I'm not saying it can't, but when you have a stock that's this thinly traded, this is a much higher risk. So for anyone that's too caught off guard watching the shiny object in the room and just thinking, oh, I'm just going to make this money here, you're gambling. You are not making intelligent decisions with your money. And most of us are not doing that exactly, right? Most of us are applying strategy very well, but I scream it from the mountaintop right now with my sandpaper throat here because again, every now and then there are a trader or two or even more that per month that will look to discontinue because they just took a huge hit. And more often than not, it's on something like this. More often than not, it's like giant spread, thin stock, no one real out there trading it. I mean, I guess this person's out there nearly 11K. Well, that's a sell order. So maybe if that breaks, there's a better chance for this to try and run, but we'll leave it at that. Even if this does pop, it has a big spread. So doesn't always make for the most intelligent trade to take just because it's like, a quick mover. You know what I mean? Irving says NXL moving again. All right, we'll take a look at that. Compare apples to oranges, right? I mean, it looks like it kind of has a slightly better book, but it's not even moving too well, Irving, here. It's like break even on the day. This is where we'll teach this more in our class, even coming up this afternoon. Actually, a great segue. Phase 1 stock course coming up this afternoon, folks, at 3 p.m. Eastern. So again, for all of our bronze students and above, that's basically any like Cyber Group Plus and above, you have access to Phase 1. We're going to be talking about scanning and just more so building up the watch list again in relation to volume. So, just right here, you want a stock that's up that 5% or more, 5% or more right there. CNSP was up like, 30% at the time that I scanned for it here. Looks like it popped. So, all right, well, hey, you know what? If it's going to break resistance and if it's going to run off of it a little bit, let me ask one more time before we finish up. This is where we'll finish here. Resistance should initially look to become what? Support. So, if you miss the breakout, don't worry just yet. I think that there still could be plenty of time just to see what happens coming up. Now, really quick, if you're on YouTube, Facebook Live, all of our social media streams and platforms alike, kind of old school edition here. We'll have our fancier template at least back up next week. But otherwise, hey, make sure to follow and subscribe right to our YouTube channel, namely that being at Cyber Trading View on YouTube. We stream live each and every day, each and every morning, that is. Live podcast every Wednesday, live webinar headed by Fausto, 35 plus year pro in the stock market. Every Thursday. So if you have not followed or subscribed to our YouTube channel, make sure to do that. And at least join us inside our live trading room, our next broadcast there, at least for Grant, George, Michael, Kathleen, Barbara, Leda, all of our students in chat right now. 2:30 p.m. Eastern, just going into the afternoon. I'll catch my breath, get some warm tea, a little honey, hopefully relax the voice there. It'd be good for you folks coming up this afternoon. Talk to you all then. Take care.